Good morning.
Morning. We are recording these videos, so when you get home tonight and you just want to relax, you can watch it again instead of watching a movie or something. This is better. Show it to your loved ones. Nobody thought that was funny. Okay, that's all right.
I was laughing pretty
Oh,
loud.
okay. Thank you, Tammy.
I just muted so you don't have to hear the kids' video playing in the background to keep the 3-year-old entertained.
Well, he should watch this. This is more entertaining than anything he's watching. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know. She's watching like a couple kids are like 2 and 5, and they have a some very energetic parents who are like social media like people, and so it's the best day ever all the time.
Best day ever. Okay.
Yeah. So they throw like plastic balls in the hot tub pool, and they all like literally just jump in, and crazy stuff.
To be young again.
I know. I'm actually inspired. We may have to do some of that.
Right. I got a pool in my backyard after last night's rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to be hosting. It's almost. I'll give it a couple more minutes. I'll be right back.
Good morning, Tammy. Hey, and let's see, Tammy's the only one. I'm making great progress on fixing the Northwest Regional link. Not quite yet. Oh, and Becky's on too. I am making good progress. I've got some of the bigger ones done, the bigger loads done, and I'm kind of in a rhythm. So Tim's going to go through Tuesday stuff today, and I'm going to continue to work on this so you guys can get moving on your new year. But I will be here listening. Make sure he doesn't lie to you. No, he won't lie to you. Okay, so stay tuned. Maybe by afternoon I'll have it kind of fixed up.
All right, so we got Beth, Tammy, Carolyn, and Becky. Let me write that
Tim,
down.
we've got the same office. That's kind of weird.
Huh, we're in the same chair too. Crazy.
All right, I'm still going to be listening.
Okay. So I have a little bit of an agenda, just going to go over some things you guys probably already know, but feel free to interrupt because if you have a question or a comment, I'm sure somebody else has the same one. You know, typical classroom group group behavior. So I'm just going to talk about the data sets in ESP. Understanding the data sets is super important to how ESP works. I know it can be a source of aggravation or misunderstanding about all the columns and the colors. But basically, and I sent a handout yesterday. Did everybody get it? I can send it through. I can send it again if anybody needs it. It's just this PDF right here. Just talking about the 4 different data sets in ESP. And I'm sure you guys, all of y'all have used ESP for a while, so you probably know. Data sets are individual sets of data, obviously, that are independent of each other. And the There's 4 of them. The first one being what we call the current, or in everyone here's case, the Infinite Visions data set. This is the information that initially gets loaded into ESP. Like when you create a new year, or you reload your employees, or you reload your budget, it gets loaded only into thank you, only into the blue Infinite Visions columns. On a new year, which we'll talk about later, it gets reloaded into, it takes a snapshot of what's in your Infinite Visions and then copies it over into the model, because that's generally where you want to start your new year. Okay, this is where we are in Visions. This is where all the budget items are. This is where all the employees are. Let's bring them into ESP. So they come into the blue columns, Infinite Visions, and then we copy them over into the model, and then that's your starting point. And then they do not get reloaded again into the blue Infinite Visions columns until you manually say, I want to do another reload. And then nothing ever gets copied over. I'm going to stress this a few times. Nothing ever gets copied over into the model without you specifically telling it to do that. Because our number one rule is not changing any of your model data. I've had a lot of people call me and say, Tim, yesterday this number was this, and this morning it's this. Generally, that's never really happened. Once we investigated, we realized that they did something that they didn't realize they did, but we do not change any of your model numbers, especially overnight. The only thing that happens overnight is, which brings me to the other data set, is we reload your actuals. It happens about 3 a.m. every night. And it is basically the same as the blue, but it happens on a daily basis, a nightly basis. It goes and grabs it every night so that you can say, okay, as of today, and of course, because of the outage we're having, I can't show you the date, but normally you can open up Scenario Explorer. We got to speed Scenario Explorer up. It takes a while to load because we're loading so many. We're thinking about trimming a lot of these off the older years so that the form loads faster. But generally, you'll have just one of these here, the daily in the 2021 snapshots, and it will say today's date, 1/13/20 daily. And you'll know that, okay, the daily loaded as of 1 a.m. And down here in the bottom right of the main form, you have this little database download icon. If you put your cursor over there and let it hover, you'll see when the blue Infinite Visions column was reloaded, which means that's the last time you reloaded. And remember, there's 2 reloads. There's a reload of the financials, the budget items, and then separately, there's the reload of the employees. They are independent of each other. But the last time that this Infinite Visions, these columns were populated, which one of us manually told it to download, was on June 2nd. And then the last time the actuals ran, the purple columns, would be October 9th at 2:54 in the morning. So anytime you have questions about when it was last reloaded, you can just, excuse me, put your mouse cursor over that to see, and it's the same on the employees. You can see when they were last reloaded. We've had some districts where they're like, well, I don't really care about the blue columns because that's just kind of old data. So you can, you could go up there and just hide it if you want to. And did you know that if you click on the upper level of something, it would, like if I clicked on the upper level there, it would hide all the Infinite Visions columns. But I've had some people tell me, I only use the actuals. Maybe not on the financials, but on the employees anyway. Any questions about reloading or the date or when it happens? And of course, Murphy's Law that we're having problems reloading the dailies right now. But normally this would say daily, and today's date. And then of course you have your monthly snapshots as well. Those happen on the 10th. So like on January the 10th, it would load December 2020 actuals. And these are all basically just for reference. That's really all the Infinite Visions and the actual Infinite Visions actual columns are. It's just a reference. Okay, this is what we spent last year on the operating budget, and this is what we have budgeted this year. This so far we've spent $372 in 1920, and then you have your 2 prior years. I'm sorry, 3 prior years, and then this would be your actuals of this year. So this year nothing's been spent. So these 2 data sets, the Infinite Visions and the Infinite Visions actuals, is just for reference. Same as on the employees tab. It's just a reference to say, okay, this is where they are in our Infinite Visions. Which reminds me, I won't be able to do it, but you can always, if you have questions about the actuals, you can always right click on the employees or a budget item and click on Infinite Vision details. Of course, I can't do that right now because there's no connection to back to IV right now, but normally you can do that. You can see, it'll bring up this budget item and tell you a lot of information about that budget item and how many checks have been written and posted for that budget item. So just remember, the green is what we're working on. That's our model. The blue is you tell that when to reload, and it's always there. That was your starting point. And then the actuals update on a daily basis. You have the same columns that you have in the model. You have them in your Infinite Visions as well. There's a lot more on the employees. And then the actuals, you have a lot of actuals information. The 4th data set, as you all know, is the baseline. And that is, it could be there, it could not be there. You create it yourself when you go to Tools, Baseline, Save a Baseline. And what a baseline is, the best example I can tell you is it's just a copy of your model, and you basically take a snapshot of it before you make a change so that you can see the effect of the change. A good example would be if you wanted to know, well, we're going to do a COLA, let's see what that's going to cost us. So before you go to the salary plans and input the COLA, you go to Tools, Baseline, Save Baseline, and it'll give it a name. I would call this maybe pre-COLA. I would click OK. It would just make a copy of the model, and it's read-only. I should say that these other 2 data sets are read-only as well, for the most part. Unless you're an admin, you can go in and make some changes. But it makes a read-only copy of the model, right? So I save the baseline, then you can go, now you will have this, it would be called pre-COLA. We saved one before called ESP demo, and it makes a copy of the model. So then I would go and add the amount column, which is the same as this amount column. So then I have, okay, this was before the COLA, and then, so add the column, then I would go to the salary plans. I don't know when that baseline was saved. I would make my changes on the salary plans, COLA, steps, whatever it is I wanted to do to find out the cost of the changes. Then come back here after saving and recalc, and then you can do a delta between the baseline, which was before the changes, the pre-COLA. Now the model has the COLA, so you place a delta between those after those 2 columns, and it tells you, okay, in this probably wouldn't be the best scope to do it, but you can see, okay, this would go from 68,000 to 70,000, all the associated costs and any other deltas that affect that change made. So just like the other data sets, the baseline is for referencing. This is what we did. This is what it was before. This is what it is after, and this is the difference. As well, you could go to the Employees tab. If you wanted a little bit more breakdown. You notice I'll right click up here. That same baseline is there, and then I can add whichever column I want because I know that was like pre-COLA. And same concept, two same columns, and then add a delta. Did you know that you can click this toolbar button just to get a dollar delta, but you can also right click, go to calculated. You can also, delta value is what the toolbar button is, just a dollar delta value. But you can also do a percent, a dollar and a percent. And you could even do a product quotient and sum if you wanted to. But if I knew I gave everybody a 3% COLA, maybe I would want to do a delta value percent. And this is, you can name the column. And yeah, I don't know where this baseline was before, but it would tell you the dollar difference and the percent. So this went up $772 at 2.3%. Just so you can verify, okay, everybody got 3%, you should see 3% in the annual rate, because the annual rate comes from their salary plan. So those are your 4 data sets. Remember, your model is what we're working on. The current, your Infinite Visions, your Infinite Visions actuals, and your baseline are for referencing against the model. Okay. Yeah, everybody here is Infinite Visions.
Not everybody.
Who said, oh, Beth, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. I mean, I saw you, but my eyes just went right over it.
I was going to say, I'm the only one with my camera up. You missed
Right.
it.
I thought you were Scott. That's what it was.
Oh, thanks.
You're right. So for you, because these are customizable,
Tim, try not to offend our clients.
Yeah. So for yours would say Skyward up here, but everything else is
or Business Plus is
our Business Plus, right? Thank you. But everything else is same concept. If you guys have a column heading that that, like this one says total wages, but you guys might refer to it as total pay or total something else. A big one that we get are benefits. We've always, when I say we, I mean me and Scott, we always think of benefits as medical benefits. But I know a lot of districts, when you say benefits, they're talking about workers' comp, Social Security. So these are all editable, and we can change these column headings to be whatever you're used to, so that everything makes a little bit more sense. So if you don't like something, just let us know. We can change it so that ESP works for you. Any questions about baseline? If you ever want to know, okay, there's a good example. I wasn't sure when this baseline was saved or anything about it. You can always go to the Assumptions tab. And if you go up to the very top on the left here, Scenario Factors, there is a baseline, at the very top, baseline there's the label that you can change if you want to. So if I don't want to call it ESP demo, I can change it. And then there's the last date and time that it was saved. Because I know a lot of times you'll save a baseline, you'll use it right then, and then a few days later you're like, well, where does that baseline come from? So yeah, it's always good to name it something that you can remember. I always kind of think of a baseline as just a very basic like crosstab. With a baseline, you can only do one column, or you only have one data set, so to speak. Whereas with crosstab, you can lay different scenarios and different columns out. It's a very extended baseline type tool. So baseline is just for simple, okay, let's make a change. How much is that change going to cost us? Save a baseline, make a change, do a delta, and bam, you have exactly what that change is going to cost.
Good morning, Tim. This is Rhonda.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hi. Hey, so my question is on the baseline, is it kind of a one and done thing within your scenario, or can you override it if you accidentally made a change and didn't want to create your baseline back to what you wanted it to be?
Yeah, there is if you go to the baseline menu, you're talking about restoring?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can restore. So if I clicked restore, it would overwrite. It would take the baseline and overwrite it back on top of the model. So if you made some changes and you didn't like it, you could overwrite. But Scott, that wouldn't affect, like if you made changes on the assumptions, it wouldn't affect that, right? If you check box, are you there, Scott? Yeah, so I mean, if you went into the assumptions and reconfigured a bunch of stuff, it doesn't overwrite those. I'm pretty sure it does not do that. Let me double check on that, exactly the extent of the restore.
Okay. Yeah, because I know last year I kind of messed that up and I needed my base. I had made some changes and I couldn't figure out how to get my baseline back in that scenario. So I just created a brand new scenario.
Right. I wouldn't rely.
Tim, my speaker, I was switching around. I didn't hear the whole conversation.
Well, Rhonda was asking about restoring a baseline. To what extent does it restore? I mean, if you go to the assumptions and you make a bunch of changes on the assumptions, it wouldn't revert those, would it?
No, it's only the data sets.
Right.
So it's only the data, the budget items and the salary plans and the employees are the only thing that are included in the baseline. So all of your assumptions are not saved.
Right.
Interesting concept though, Rhonda.
I'm always trying to think, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our problem is sometimes we think too much, but I definitely understand. And I think we might have talked about this. There's a concept of being able to unwind adjustment sessions, but it's just, I've never been able to get my arms fully around if that would be possible. It's kind of like an undo, a Control Z if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
Yeah, so and just brief thought, whenever you think about undoing, you really think about the logical thing is, okay, I need to undo what I just did and yet build this stack, okay, I'm going to undo this, then this, and this. But the way that really works is when you make a change, yes, we save the change and it's in an adjustment in a session, but then you also save a step or an action. Okay, what would I need to do to undo this as a specific step? It may never be used, but that's how effectively undos are done, is not necessary to record what you did. It's what do I need to do to go backwards and actually save that step. So it's, it's on my radar, but I don't know that we're going to get to it soon.
Because it's kind of like the butterfly effect. One change can, really extrapolate out.
Yeah, and then it turns into a moth instead of a butterfly.
Right. Get an ugly moth. So, so did that answer your question?
It
Rhonda?
did, thanks, yeah.
So but if you make some changes, just some budget items, or maybe on some employees, you could restore back over that. But if you go to the assumptions and changing the assumptions around, it would not unwind that piece.
So you
say-
basically need to go back and change your assumptions back to what they were on the, what you wanted your baseline to be.
Right. Okay. Let's say a good example is I save a baseline and then I go to the assumptions and I changed Social Security from 7.65 to 10%. And like, oh, I don't like that. Restoring a baseline would not change the Social Security back to 7.65 because that part is not saved in the baseline.
Gotcha.
It would write back over from the baseline onto the employees, the original, but as soon as you recalc, it would recalc at the 10%.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
When you
Thank
recalc,
you.
that's what triggers all of these calculations and things to be applied. So, yeah. But if you just made some simple like, work days, work hours, move some employees, change some budget items, simple stuff like that on the financials and employees, you should be able to restore that way. You can also, if you wanted to, for some reason, if you have a baseline that you know is just worthless anymore, you could just clear it, which let's just do it and see what happens. If you know it's just noise. You don't need to clear it before you save a new one. You can just save a new one over an old one. So then I would, stupid Zoom hides all my toolbar. So now you'll notice when I right click that fourth data set, the baseline is gone. So that's the fourth data set. It's there or it's not, if that makes any sense. It's there if you save it. Any questions about the baseline? It's a pretty simple concept. Just whenever you want to see the effects of a change. Or any questions about any of the data sets? I was talking about their read only, but you'll notice that because I'm an app admin, my my Infinite Visions colors here are light blue and I have a blue outline. I could go in and make changes. Most users won't be able to do this. And the reason being, let's say it's, coming to the end of the, your printing budget book, or, you need to change this number for some reason. Maybe it's been changed in Visions and it's just not in here, or whatever your reasoning is, you want to change this number, you can. It doesn't really have any effect on your model. I mean, it doesn't have any effect on your model, but if you just say, look, I need that number to be 1,000, you can go in there and put 1,000 in.
And that only is for the working budget. The adopted budget you cannot change because that's a matter of record. But the working budget you could. It just saves you having to go into Infinite Visions, make a change, reload your budget, blah, 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 when you're trying to get your budget book out. That's why we did that.
Right. Most people don't show their adopted column, but it is there. And you'll notice it's a darker blue, just like on the model. A darker color means it's not editable with the red border, but the light is. Excuse me. I haven't talked this much in a long time. On the actuals, you have the amount, an encumbrance, and a total amount. These are the current year actuals, but you also have, I hope I can remember all of them. You go to that data set, you have an adjustment. This, and notice it's light purple. If you needed to make, if you know there's a change again, like for budget book purposes, if you need your total amount here to change, you can add the adjustment column and then add an amount in here. So you have your amount that comes from ERP system, plus your adjustment, plus any encumbrances for your total amount. So if you needed that number to change for some reason, like I said, normally reporting, you could just go in and make a change. Normally you wouldn't do this. You would let it feed through every day from your ERP, but if you needed to on that day, you could do that. You could always, as well, if you know the change is in your ERP, Visions or Business Plus, you can always go to your daily snapshot, right click on it and say reload snapshot. What that does is it's just like running the 3 a.m. daily. It will go grab everything and reload it back into your purple columns. It doesn't, this is not reloading into the blue. This is just reloading your daily. So if you know there's been changes to the actuals that you want to bring in, this is how you would get it. You needed to get it in now. This is how you would get it in to ESP, reload the snapshot. What that does is it basically makes a scenario, creates the scenario, and then copies it into, well, that brings me to another point. There is a checkbox. Let me see if I have it showing. Here we go, called Update Daily Actuals. This is in Scenario Explorer. By default, I believe they're checked. They're not checked here for these reference scenarios, but they are when you create a scenario. And you have update daily actuals, financials, employees. If you didn't want the actuals to update, you could go here and uncheck these check boxes, but by default they are on. I think when we go to a new year, we try to uncheck. So if you ever go back to an old scenario, you might need to come check these check boxes if you wanted to look at the actuals for some reason of an older scenario. And let's say I wanted to update, I would have to, this scenario, I would have to go in here, check that check box, save it, then go back to the daily and reload the daily to get that, or wait till the next day. The daily would run overnight, and then anything that has these checked, it would update the actuals. So if your actuals aren't updating for some reason, first thing to do is just check this checkbox.
Tim, we're not seeing your Scenario Explorer screen.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'm not doing something right. I'll just share the whole screen. How's that? Can you see it now?
No.
Nope.
What? Y'all are just lying to me. Oh, I gotta press the share button. Here we go. How's that?
Great.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay, so let me rewind. Let me, here's Scenario Explorer. Golly, okay. So these are the, normally there would only be one daily here. This is because we're having reload issues right now, thanks to the Russian hack. Normally there would just be one daily here, and it would be today's date. And I'm trying to remember what I said about it. If you ever want to reload, you right click on the daily snapshot and click reload snapshot. That serves the same purpose as the daily that runs in the middle of the night. It basically just goes and grabs all of your financial employee data and brings it into ESP. And the columns I was talking about were these update daily actuals, financial and employees, two separate ones. And these are the check boxes. Whatever is checked after the daily loads will get pushed into the scenarios that have these checked. And you can see as you get older, we try to uncheck them because it does just take a lot of processing power to move it into these scenarios. And if they're older scenarios, there's really no reason to update the actuals. But just remember, if you ever look at an older scenario or your scenarios don't appear to be updating. Well, first of all, if
This
they're
is
not
Scott.
updating, Scott, can you mute, please? Okay, I cut him. If there's a problem with your dailies, we will zero out your actuals. We didn't for this because I need it for the demo. But because we would rather give you zeros and show that it didn't load than give you old data. Do you guys have data in your actuals? Anybody have their ESP up?
Yes and yes.
Yes, okay, you have data. That was Beth?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have the daily? Your daily might be running, actually.
I don't see that. I just see the actuals.
Okay. So yeah, we zero out your actuals if there's a problem running them on a daily basis, because better to zero them out than have old data. Any questions about the actuals? I've had,
Actually,
sorry?
I was gonna say, I do have the daily, but it's as of the 6th, it's dated the 6th.
6th of January?
Yeah.
Okay. Probably the same issue then. We will look at that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so some people have said they don't even use the blue columns. They just use the actuals. So it's up to you which data set you want to use, especially for the employees. Go over to the employees. Is there a way to hide this bar? On the employees tab, let me reset my columns. We hide the actuals by default, but they are there as well. So you could add any of the columns that you wanted to. But remember that with the employees, this was only as of, you can just look right here, 6/2/20 at 11 p.m. That's where the blue. So some districts have chosen just to hide this column and only show the actuals, because it's fresh data every day. If you have a new employee that comes in, when the actuals loads, it will bring that new employee into ESP. They will show up over here, whatever their account code is, but they will not have any model or blue column data. They will just exist in Infinite Vision, in the actuals columns, but they will be here. I believe they'll be in purple. So basically like a mid-year hire. And then it's to let you know, hey, there's a new person here. You know, if you want to bring them into ESP, you can always right click and you can say copy fundings from Infinite Visions daily. That would copy them from the actuals into your model. Or if they're if you reload the employees into the blue columns, you would probably have some employees show up. They're not in your model. You can right click and say, of course, they would probably be in your daily as well, but you could copy them then from just the blue data set. Let me add the, wish the actuals were working, but they're not. Any questions so far? So it is, you definitely have to understand the 4 data sets, what they're used for. Reference only except for the model. Each column corresponding, yeah, every model column has a corresponding column in the other data sets, except for the actuals. You might not have some of the columns in the actuals. Talked about all this. Be sure the update actuals is selected for each scenario you wanted update nightly in the Scenario Explorer. Just to understand about when you do reload, like I said before, we do not touch your model. So don't worry about reloading your employees or reloading budget items. Unless you specifically tell it to copy to the model, it will not copy to the model. And there's different areas where that would come into play. Like pay components is one when you're using actuals a lot of times. Like here's one: update model factors on next employee reload. So if you were using actuals and you needed to bring in data, you would check this. And these checkboxes exist in a few different places. A lot of times when you reload, there'll be a checkbox like in that screenshot: copy to model and recalculate. This was reload Infinite Visions. You specifically have to check a checkbox on the reload, because we always want to be very careful about copying over your model. And once you do reload, this checkbox, for example, would clear. Anything that's checked to overwrite the model clears after the reload. So if you wanted to do it again, you would have to check that to have it overwrite your model again. So don't be afraid to reload. Reload as much as you want. It does not affect your model, as long as you don't have anything checked telling it to. So this was just an example of what I was saying was update model on next employee reload. It's just describing information about the data sets. Okay, how ESP calculates FTE. This is kind of a source of a lot of confusion. So we'll look at this on the salary plans. The columns, I'm going to reset the columns. Something to always check, and you only need to check it once when you first start working in ESP, because then it should carry forward after that. But you have FTE calc method, and that works along with FTE calc source. In this district, it's work hours. An employee's work hours determines their FTE. I have a good example. In here, it's basically FTE is a ratio. So the calc method is work hours. So it takes an employee's work hours and it compares it to the work hours of their position, the position that they're in, work hours. So if the position is set for 8 hours and their work hours are 8, it would be 1.0 FTE. Some districts have, I believe Beth in Washington, they use, I don't know anybody that uses work days, but work time. And work time is an employee's work hours times their total work days. So basically how many hours they work in a year. You could set that to work time. So then it would be the work time of that employee compared to the work time of the position. I believe Beth and Washington uses work calendar, or you have the salary plan that you can compare it to. So this is what you're comparing the calc method, the employees' values against to determine their FTE. So here's an example. If this was set to salary plan, anybody on this plan, it would be their work time, their hours times days over the salary plan's hours times days, 8 times 235. So that ratio of their work time versus the ratio of the salary plan's work time would determine their FTE. Believe I have, let's see. When you're on the employee grid, you can put your mouse cursor over the plan code and it will tell you the calc source and calc method of that employee. Well, not of that employee, but basically of the salary plan that they're on. So in this case, their calc source is salary plan and it's work time. So their hours and days compared to the salary plan's hour and days determines their FTE. Let me see. Does that make sense? So you have, as you know, whenever we get a new district, one of the first things we have to talk about is how they calculate their FTE and make sure that this is one of the first things that gets set up. And I get quite a few calls where people say, Tim, I have somebody on this salary plan. They're only 180 days. Are there 180 days and the math doesn't work out. And then we have to dig into what they're using for their calc method and their calc source. It should be fairly consistent across all of your salary plans, how FTE is calculated. You can go to the employees. I don't want to save these changes. Mouse cursor over an employee. So position is the calc source work hours. So her work hours are 8, but I need to find out the work hours of the position she's in. So you can go to position. I might be in the wrong place. Sorry, there's a lot of columns. Work hours. Oh, here we go, position. Position work hours. Eight. The position that she is assigned to has 8 work hours. So since she's 8, 8 over 8 is 1, hence her FTE is 1. Scott, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to try to remember if you change the position work hours, that changes it for all the entire position, right? Everybody.
Correct. It's the same with the work calendars. Is because we don't really have a form to actually go in and edit the all of the different work calendars for work days. So if you change a work calendar work days, it's going to change that work calendar record. So everybody else who uses that same work calendar, it's going to change their work calendar work days also, and the same with positions. So if they share the same work calendar and you make a change to a work calendar, everybody on that work calendar changes, the same with position.
Okay.
So you could make one simple change in a work calendar and then see FTE changes all over the place, or whoever else will uses that work calendar will be affected.
Right.
Hey, Tim, could you,
Yes.
how did you get the position work hours up there?
Right click, go to the model,
The model.
position.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have the calendar there too, if you use it. I always thought it was weird, kind of weird in Oregon. If you work 8 hours, 1 8-hour day, you're a full FTE. But that's how it works. Back on this salary plans, the purpose of the salary plan is, as far as the annual rates go, or the pay, is to get it down to the hourly rate. So an annual rate comes in, and I'd have a descriptor here, how salary plans calculate. The idea in ESP is to get an annual rate, divide it by the work time, which is the plan's days times hours, to get the hourly rate. And then anyone assigned to 813, it takes their work time, multiplies it times the hourly rate. It doesn't do it by day. It does it by, it doesn't do it by FTE. It does it based on the hourly rate. So anyone assigned to this, no matter what their work days and work hours are, it just takes their work time times $14.363 an hour. For any of the plans that are hourly, the hourly comes in and then we build the annual. But the whole purpose of this salary plan is to get it broken down into the hourly rate. Then the hourly rate is what's used to calculate employees' annual rate. You can always right click. Now remember, there's 2 daily rates. This is the daily rate of the employee, which might be different than the daily rate of the salary plan they're on based on their work time, because they might have a different work time than the salary plan. So their hourly rate might be different. Oh, I didn't mean to do daily rate, I meant to do hourly rate. So even when you, on the salary plans, when you do an additional day, it's doing it based on the work hours. It's not just adding 1 day, it's adding whatever the salary plan's work hours are, 7.5 or 8 daily rate. But we have a, salary plan. You have a salary plan daily rate. This would be the daily rate that's used to calculate employees' total annual rate. Oh, I'd say daily rate. Forgive me. I meant to do hourly rate. Maybe we don't show the daily rate here. Okay, maybe we don't show the daily rate here, but it is broken down into the hourly rate.
No, the salary plans themselves don't have a daily rate, just the employees do. So it's the
Okay.
work days times the work hours.
Right, but I thought we showed the salary plan hourly rate.
Actually, we do calculate a salary plan. Wait a minute, hourly rate on the salary plan?
Yeah, the salary plan they're on, because that's what's used to.
No, I don't know that we do that.
Okay.
Is the salary plan annual rate there in the employee grid?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think any of the individual rates are there. They are calculated because we can use them in pay components.
Right.
No, I don't think we did that. I mean, it's something that could be added if people see value to it, because the values are there in the salary plans table. But somebody would have to tell us why they wanted it.
Right. Okay, any questions? So when you bring in a new salary plan, you obviously want to make sure that it's the days and hours are correct, as well as the annual rate, so that we get down to the hourly rate correctly, the correct hourly rate. You'll see here when you add a COLA, it's basically changing the changes the annual rate, which changes the hourly rate. There's an example of it on the documents. Just a side note here about when you guys send us screenshots, if you could send us a screenshot of the entire screen. I know it might seem really big and a lot of information that might not seem helpful, but for us it is. We can see what scenario you're in, we can see what your scope was, we can see what tab you're on. We can see a lot more information that helps us troubleshoot any issues that you have of why you're sending us a screenshot. So, and when you send it, try to send it as big as possible when you paste it into your email. Because a lot of times I'll get screenshots this size. Of course, this was meant for a big screen, so you could see it better, but it can be difficult to see. I have to use my little magnifier sometimes to try to figure out what I'm looking at. So anyway, always send us as much information as you can and bigger screenshots. If you get an error message, just this doesn't help us. We need the entire screen to know where you were, what you were doing, etc. Because the first step for us in helping is trying to reproduce what the problem was. Once we can reproduce it, then we can figure it out and fix it. All right, we won't talk about timesheets right now. Any questions about anything? Anybody have any suggestions about what you want to talk about next? I was going to talk about doing QBEs. Nobody?
Sounds good.
Okay. And you guys know about the benefit plan. Scott talked about that yesterday or Monday. This is where you assign your benefit plan. This list is basically built from your benefit plan list over here on the assumptions. So if you have a new plan, you build it here, then you go to the salary plan tab and assign it. And Scott said that a new feature is when you assign a new plan, benefit plan, any employees that were on this salary plan will get reassigned to the new benefit plan as well. You used to have to go manually change them, but now you don't have to. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. All right, let me refresh.
Hey, Tim.
Yes, ma'am.
Rhonda here. Could you just go over quickly adding a manual step to a salary schedule?
Sure. All right, so let's say I want to add a step 11. You can right click, add step. You can give it a name if you want to. If it's just $, it will just pick up the one above it and add one. You can give it a % increase from the previous step, or you can manually give it an annual rate. So let's just do 2%. So it's going to add, I think once I save, that will go to 11, or it is 11. And it basically just makes a clone of the previous step and adds whatever percent you want to add for the annual rate.
So however you're stepping people down, you definitely need to add either the amount or the percentage movement, correct?
Right. You mean the amount of the annual rate?
Yeah, like the two options back there when you hit add, when you went to go add one, was
Mhm.
you put a percent in there. I saw that it actually calculated the rate.
Right.
So you definitely have to put a percent in.
A percent or an amount in, because it might not
Okay.
be an exact percent if you don't know the percent. You could just put in the rate there.
And then it won't automatically receive the COLA that was listed on there.
No. It doesn't look like it will.
But it will, but when you recalculate, you set the base rate, and then when you recalculate salary plans, the COLA will be taken into consideration.
But
It
when
will, okay.
you wouldn't have to add it there, Scott, to the new step?
Oh, I see. I thought we actually talked about that yesterday, that it was going to do that it would populate that.
That's a small issue I had last year when I had to add a couple of steps, but it didn't give them the COLA, I didn't think.
Oh, hold on. Let me write that down. SP add step, not replicating COLA.
Yep, no,
Okay.
it didn't. And it probably wouldn't replicate the step enable either, I would bet. Something to check.
Oh, I thought it was actually going to do that.
I don't know. I didn't check that. I would have to double check that later, but
Okay. Okay, I'll check that.
and again, the green plus for anybody that missed it yesterday means that something is different about this tree node. So a lot of times you'll see that. We've seen it where a lot of times your calc method is different. So make sure you pay attention to the green pluses. Make sure that that's what you want. Because here's a good example. I added that new step. There's no COLA on this one. So it knows that something is different about this section. And it's just alerting you that, hey, something's different. You might want to double check that. Because generally everything is the same on all the steps.
And then could you also, just one more thing, go over the setting the max step? You know, there's often a max step that they go to.
Right. Let's see. Let me add model.
I think it's under stepping.
Yeah, stepping right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Max step. So it looks like if you add a step, the max step will move up
Okay.
automatically.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Everybody knows how to do the COLA. When you want to do a COLA, you can always put one. If I wanted everybody to have 5%, you can put it at the top level, and every salary plan grade and step would get the 5%. Or you can go in and do it. I don't think I've ever seen them different within the plan, but you could do different plans, have their own individual. So a lot of times you want to just collapse it maybe down to this level and do your COLAs. And that would apply your COLAs and stepping. That way it would apply just to that plan that you're on. Same with days. You can add additional days. You can also do negative additional days, furlough days, which basically just adjusts the rate. If you ever want to see like if everybody on one particular plan, you can right click on it and say employees. which kind of leads into my next topic, and that's a QBE. Oh, that's the problem. I gotta get rid of these changes. If you try to change tabs and there's pending changes, it will ask you if you want to save before it changes tabs. So this is everybody that was on plan 1. Basically, it switches to the employees tab and does a QBE. QBE means query by example. And it's basically it adds the plan code column and it says everybody that was on plan 1, regardless of grade or step, show me everybody that's on that plan. And then if you wanted to, you could even pare it down further by adding more parameters. Okay, I want everybody that's making over $100,000. So then it tells me people on that plan and they're making over 100,000. Annual rate is over 100,000. And then whenever you're done with a QBE, and remember when you do a QBE, you have to make sure you have the column that you want to query on first. You can click this. This is we call this the QBE toolbar. When you want to clear it, you just click the red reset. And it'll take you back to whatever you had in your scope. It won't take you back to the salary plans. It'll keep you on the employees tab. So if I wanted to, let's see, I want to know anybody making, getting a lot of Social Security. So I don't have the Social Security column. So I need to right click, model, fixed cost, Social Security column. I go into QBE mode by clicking the only one that's active up here right now, which is start a QBE. And then I double click in here and say anybody, I don't know, I guess I should have looked, anybody over $500 in Social Security, which actually that's probably not enough, say 1,000. If you press enter, it will do it across, it will ignore the scope. No, I'm sorry, pressing enter stays within the scope, only the scope that I have in there. If I wanted to, what was that? If I wanted to ignore the scope, you could click this icon here, toolbar icon, and that says full scope. So ignore 131 and look at all across all the employees. So you can either do a QBE within the scope that you're in, or you do a QBE regardless, ignoring the scope, full scope basically, which takes a little bit longer, of course. And don't forget down here, you always have a record count. So there's 1,397 positions, not particularly employees, but positions that are over 1,000 in Social Security on a yearly basis. So then you have that information. You could save that to a spreadsheet if you want to. This was a lot of records because of the way I have no summing in my scope. It's every employee is broken down the entire account code. It's a lot of rows. Probably shouldn't have saved this spreadsheet. And there's always the faster ways of saving is reports. You could do an unformatted or even a raw data, and it would create much faster. When you do it with the toolbar, it's trying to do the colors, all of the formatting. It's a lot nicer looking, but it does take a little bit longer to create.
Hey, Tim, are you only allowed to do one QBE at a time, or can you add multiples to different columns?
Yeah, you could
I thought you could.
Yeah, remember a while ago I did that. I did plan code and then anybody making over 100,000.
So why are mine not allowing me to do that? What am I doing wrong?
Well, I
You
don't
have
know.
to put the QBE back into edit mode by double clicking in the QBE row.
Yeah, if you just double click, one quick thing, I think I can try to cancel. Yeah, see, so if something's taking too long, you can always try that was active there, that red, and it will try to kill whatever you're doing. So that was a good use of it there.
It's the double click. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ron, I wasn't sure. Yeah, just double click in there.
You can also hit the edit button on the toolbar again to put it back into QBE edit mode.
You know what I don't like, Scott, that I just realized is that when you put it back in QBE mode, it clears the grid.
Well, it does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with normally not all columns are editable, but if you're doing filtering, let's see, I know there's a markup. Where do you find that, Tim?
What's that?
The markup arrows on the.
Oh, go to annotate.
Who's that? Annotate. No, I don't. Anyway.
You had there's a little ellipse, I think, for you, and then there's an annotate.
Okay, view options. Oh, annotate there. Okay, so so these columns here, they all have to be editable in order to put filter values in. So it's if I keep the grid open, I have to make all columns editable, and that's just not. You could then go in and change things, and it's just not an effective way to do it. So in ESP3, we're still in major release 2 when we move this application fully to .NET. I believe there's going to be drop-down query filters like there are in Excel. I think that the grid actually supports that. So, but for right now, this is what we got.
All right, I'm being told that my my video is really making me look weird. I'm like glowing.
It's because of the background.
Right. I'm just going to turn my video off for right now. Nobody needs to see me, I don't think. If anybody needs to see me, let me know. I'll send you a picture.
I need to see you, Tim.
Oh, okay. All right. How's that? Do I look better now? Everybody's still there, I hope, right? I didn't kill it. Hello?
No, you didn't kill it.
Oh, okay, good. All right. So QBE, let's see, how do I clear your annotate, Scott?
I think I might have
I cleared
to
it
do
for you. I cleared it.
there.
All right. So just remember, when you want to do a QBE, it's pretty neat, but the first thing is, I think you can add, yeah, I know you can. You can add the columns even when you're in QBE mode. So let's say, oh, I need to add, cost total or benefits, whatever. You can add the column while you're in QBE mode if you want to start paring it down. And then to get out of QBE mode, like I said a while ago, click QBE. This other toolbar icon is edit mode, but you really don't need it because you can just double click in there, which is the same thing. It just puts it back in QBE mode. And then when you're done, just click the clear button. And it'll take you back to the scope. And I'm going to go ahead and change my scope. I usually like to look at my scope. Of course, I don't work like you guys do, but full scope, or usually with the object, sometimes with the object not summed. So that way it breaks it down by certified, classified administrators. I'll put center at the top, sorry. Any questions so far from anyone? Anybody have suggestions for what to talk about next?
Let's see what's on the agenda.
How about we do a budgeted position?
Let's see. Can you hear me? Am I
Yeah, we
unmuted?
hear you.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not ready for responsibility centers, calculation group questions, grants. I'm not ready for grants or to create a new share. I'm making a lot of progress, Tammy and Becky, on this Infinite Visions fix up to make the connection back to Northwest Regional. I would say budget element maintenance, but the elements are askew. You know what we'll do? Let's do this. How do I become the host, Tim?
I think I make you the host, I'm guessing. Let me find my participants. Make host. Did you get it?
Just 1 second.
Okay. Does everyone like Zoom more than TeamViewer? The only thing about Zoom for me is it's not so easy to point and click to show when we're demonstrating.
Okay, let's see. Share. So can you guys see which screen can you see? Nothing, huh?
We see ESP.
Oh, this one? Loading?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, it doesn't have the green bar around it. That's interesting.
I think it's around your entire screen.
Yeah, but, well, I am running in a virtual machine, so maybe it's actually behind it. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is I want to show you the Oregon State School Fund. So for Beth, this is a little bit odd, but you'll be able to see some of the capabilities of how you can use calculations and factors. And let's see if I can. Becky and Tammy are saying, no, Scott's supposed to be working on our stuff. ESP support clients. Okay. So everybody in Oregon should be familiar with this document. Because this is what this is your Oregon State School Fund worksheet. So, and the way we implemented the Oregon State School Fund calculations, first of all, let's go back over to the financials and just kind of show that there. And we're going to switch to
Real quick, everyone, I'm going to try to send everyone a document through
revenue.
through the meeting here. So this will be my first time doing this, so I hope everyone gets it.
Okay, so let's see what. So
Okay,
if we look, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just sent the document. If everyone could, I don't know if you have to download it or if it just pops up, but it's a PDF. So if you don't get that, please let me know.
So I actually have a saved grid view to show the state school fund. So if we look, try to correlate the view with this sheet. You can see he might have gone in and changed these numbers. I think he might have. But you can see we've got the average daily membership regular, the programs, individual education programs, IEP, students in poverty, foster care, neglected. Where are those numbers? Oh, those numbers come from the big, from ODE. And then you have the local revenue offset, the transportation fund amount. The transportation fund amount is 957,678. He's changed his numbers to match the current sheet. I'm not sure which version I've got, but you've got your transportation grant, your common school fund. He's got his state timber funds in here, but the big deal here is he's got his ADM from the worksheet and his weightings. And basically it goes through calculations and comes up with his 9,946,000. If I had it done right, oh, wait a minute, is this it? We would actually be able to see, oh, here it is. 725 times 1, 4 times 0.5, 7975 times 1, 25.7 times 1, 87 times 0.25. So you can see all the factors. He must have changed one because it should work out to be 939.54. But that actually might show up someplace else. But when we first did this, and he might have tweaked some numbers, we could actually see all the same numbers on his distribution sheets here. 948. See it? That's ESDs. But the way this works is we use some internally created sub areas. We try to find a range of sub areas that aren't being used: E01, E02, enrollment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then T. And then you'd be able to actually download these factors. Let's see, tools, financials. Oh, calculation factors is grayed out. Let's go over to the assumptions where they're built. So here's your Oregon State transportation, the property taxes, common school fund, county school fund, state managed timber. Oh, we're actually using user factors in there also. User factor 2, we talked about those yesterday. But I wanted to look, so here's where we're using the calculation factors. And if I click on this, oh, the scenario's locked. That's what's going on. Oh, cancel, but the problem is I'm on his production database. Okay, I'll just remember to go back and lock it and not change anything. So on the calculation factors, let me refresh. Okay. So here I've got a list of calculation factors, and these are actually factors that were downloaded from the Oregon Department of Education spreadsheet. So ideally, these will automatically be able to download them, but then you can build formulas like the tech experience adjustment. You round tech experience adjustment times the tech experience adjustment payment times the ADM fund RT. These are all acronyms from the spreadsheet. The state weighted rate, and in this case it's 8217, but you can edit all of these factors. This is kind of a big excursion from ESP because we typically haven't done user formulas in calculations, but this allows you to create formulas based on factors that are set up in the factors table, and they can be different scenario by scenario. But again, this is some really, really recent stuff that we've been working on. So I'm hoping to make this package and have some documentation for it. But again, the concept is that you build formulas, and the ultimate result of the calculation is 84.77 for the average daily membership. And that takes, I don't know that I can show the calculation factors. Let's see if they show up. No, they're not showing up. But on going back to the financials, and it might be too busy. It might be something that it's just simpler to use a spreadsheet and use the form. You know, take the numbers off of your sheets and plug the numbers in. But if you set this up, and we're going to have a process that will set it up automatically and remove it if you don't want to use it, you know, you could then go in and just change your enrollment numbers and the factors, and then recalculate, and you wouldn't have to worry about copying all your revenue numbers in from your other spreadsheets. So it actually is working pretty well. I'm hoping that we'll be able to expand the usage of formulas and make better use of the calculations. But this is it's kind of a pretty big step away from just the simple calculations that ESP has had in the past. And that's why I didn't really have the state school fund on the agenda, because we still have some testing and tweaking to do. But if we look at the sub areas, where are the ones that we created? I actually don't see them. They were E's. Oh, here they are. E0, R0, T0. But there should have been some more. The enrollment, revenue, and transportation. I don't see them. Oh, here we go. Oh, they're up here. EO1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These are the items that are used in the state school fund. But those are sub areas, not areas. So I can unlock the hierarchy, and I'm going to try and, tools, allow full hierarchy editing. Yeah, it should let me move them in there. There. So I've just moved them all back where they should be. That's a change we need to make anyway.
I'll make a quick comment while you're on the budget element, Scott.
Yeah.
Because I get this quite often. These, or they just disappear. The name,
it's refreshed.
Oh, okay. The names. How do I click? Excuse me. Well, I can't figure out how to point, but the names, yeah, these cannot be changed. These are what's come from your ERP. Like the top one there, blank, then principal. If you change them in Visions or Business Plus, on the next reload, they will update. But however, there's a reporting label. So when you create budget book, you can use a different label there if you want.
Yeah, it's quite handy to have that reporting label, because you can make it say whatever you want. actually, we didn't talk about the changes on this form yesterday, and the changes. You can see most of these columns used to be white, a white background, but we changed them to be the set A or the set B, the modeling, so you could see which columns were actually editable and which weren't editable. So with this, if you're used to seeing this in white, the other change that we made is you can set it up to only look at one element at a time, like just the objects. So if you're going to work with just the objects, it's not going to load the funds or the sub areas. And this is different. And this is a result of the fact that we flattened all the budget elements into a single set, so a single fiscal year. The narratives here, you can edit those. We are making a lot of progress, and we have, I don't know, the state narratives aren't loaded yet, but we are going to be loading the state narratives into what we're calling our cloud source, so that the narratives, as they're published by ODE or OSPI in Washington, you'll be able to upload the state and populate the state narratives here. Let's see if that did it. Did it? Look at that. So I told it to update the state narratives. So it loaded from our cloud source what the ODE definitions were. Now, if there is a narrative in the state that's not, and you don't have one in your own personal or district narrative, it will actually use the one from the state. And if you don't like what the state is showing you, I got a problem with that column I got to fix. If you don't like the narrative that the state is showing, all you have to do is create your own local narrative, and it will use that one instead. But by having a separate state narrative that's not editable, that gives you the ability to choose whether you want to use the state narrative or if you want to use somebody else's, use your own narrative, and you can just change it by typing in down in the narrative box. But that's going to be a similar type of function for updating the state school fund factors, is you'll be able to load them from our cloud source in the cloud. And that, whether you're in the cloud or not, it's going to work. So what other changes were there to this form? Let's see, this is Oregon. So if I looked at the fund balance. Remember, we talked yesterday about 9700s and 5400s. 9700 is fund balance. If for some reason it should try to load 9700 or 9770 or 9771, if it were try and load that as a revenue, because we have this set up to be allowed type codes of fund balance or revenue, and the parent grouping is actually fund balance, it's going to force the mapping to stay at fund balance and not move it to revenue. And the same here with 5400 fund balance. That was a big one. If the formal type code is RV, but because we have set it up to allow type codes of fund balance or RV, it's going to map it to RV whenever it loads it, even if it might have accidentally got changed to a fund balance. So that's how we've facilitated that problem I talked about yesterday. So does anybody have any particular questions about budget element maintenance form? It's very seldom used, and you only really have to set it up if if you need to make changes to roll-ups in your budget book and things like that. The blue items mean that budget element is actually in use. We didn't find any 0125s in use anywhere in the budgets, so that they're gray. So you can kind of see which items you've actually have in use and which items are totally unused. Yep,
And ju-
question?
This is Tim. I was just going to say, you see there is some hierarchy stuff here, like 0120, and then I should have figured out how to click, but that's only to be used in budget book. So this form is closely linked to budget book. It basically, that's rolling all those 012s up to 0120. So on budget book, you could say summary level 2, and it would give you that instead of breaking down each one of those objects below it. So don't get too confused about that. It's mainly just for how it works with budget book. Because you can then roll all of those up to the very top, 0100 for a top level summary.
Right. Hold on. Martha, I would just sent you a direct message through Zoom. I'm wondering if you can see that.
Yes, I can see your message.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So Martha said we can actually, Martha's really done a great job of, and a patient job of setting up, getting but her responsibility centers and her grants set up. So this might be a good time to just touch on that. I promise I won't change anything.
Okay.
Did you lock that back? Okay, don't forget to lock that back.
Oh, yeah, I will do that.
I can go back and do it. That was
Okay.
Clascany, right?
Yep, Clatskanie modeling one.
Clascany. I drove through there the other day on the way to the coast. I was looking, pretty small, little town.
So it's a logging town. I think it's even smaller than Madras. Madras is kind of growing though. Okay, so this is Jefferson County's scenario. I'm not sure which one I'm going to load up. I'll probably be best to load up. Did you create a working scenario, Martha?
I did. I do have a working scenario.
Okay.
I should.
And this will be a time for you to give me some feedback on the grant. I'm going to look at the grants tab first, because I know nobody had used it for probably 6 or 7 years, and when you started using it, so I know we had some cleanup to do. So the idea of the grants tab is to give you the ability to just kind of track and manage the grants that you have. And Martha set it up to where she's using both the fund and her, it looks like
Yeah,
something's
something's not right. Yeah, something's not right because at 205 there should only be one grant with one sub area.
Oh, how did we wind up? We're in modeling 1, which is locked. So 205 does not have a breakout. Well, they're all empty.
Yeah, it doesn't have a breakout. There's no sub area for 205.
Let me. Does 253 has got a breakdown, right?
Yeah, 253 does have a breakdown.
Okay. Yeah, they're all 0. I wonder if I were to, I'm not going to do it because it's locked. If I were to recalculate and remove empty records, if those would go away. But let's go to the working. It could have been a byproduct of the restructuring of the budget elements that we did. That it created those extra records that, again, a recalc with remove empty records would take them all away. And again, the benefit of doing this, it just gives you visibility. You can track your indirect costs or automatically calculate them, and you can. Now, Martha, you're not using float very much, are you?
No, I'm not.
Yeah. If you wanted to make them self-balancing, you could set up a float amount, and ESP will balance the grant to 0 for you. Okay, so 205 is even still here. So. I just want to see, I'm not going to recalculate them. Oh, but it's locked for update, of course. I'm wondering if I did put the remove empty records. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to mess with your production data. But anyway, when you set up a grant, and you can do it, you can add it either from this tab where you can specify a fund and a sub area if it's set up to use both. Some districts only use funds, and it's easy to set up. But once they're added to the grid, it's going to sum up your revenue, your expenses, all of your salaries, track your total expenses and FTE for those particular grants. And then you can see Martha's set up her indirect factors. And so the indirect amounts have been calculated. It also keeps track of what's currently in Infinite Visions for those dollars. It's kind of except for the indirect factor and the float balance, it's really just kind of a summary or a roll up of what exists on the financial grid. And so if we were to right click on a grant and say show budget, it's actually going to switch our scope up to that particular grant and move us over to the financial grid. And you can see here is a summary fund by object of that grant. Here at object 690 is where it's calculating the roll up. So is it not calculating anything on that? What I did, 205? No, 205. Well, it should be here. It should be 8485. It's in the adopted. Have
Yeah.
you recalculated this?
No, I haven't, but sometimes that is an issue. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't show up. So I just have to continue to recalculate until it does.
Can I recalculate the grants in this?
That's my working, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It did not give me an option to remove empty records. I'll check on that. Okay, hold on, I got to write that down. That's probably what's happening. That's a new function that we added for this. That gives me something to work on for you, Martha. Okay, so that's why it's not being calculated, is because of that error. And just so everybody's kind of aware, I'll wait till it shows up. I should get an email that error occurred, and that's a product of the upgrade, unfortunately. So when it recalculates, we should be able to see that 8485 showing up as the calculated amount on the grid. And you can see this particular grant, it does appear to be out of balance. 6618, was that the, no, it should be 8485. So it might still be out of balance. But by looking at a grant this way with fund balance, revenue, and expenses all turned on, you can see whether your grants are balanced or not. And so this one is out, and part of that is the grant indirect charges. But if we do a successful recalc, it might actually come back into balance. And you can also see that this balance field will tell you whether you're balanced or not. Revenue to expenses. Like this one, has this all rounding problem always been there? The 209,000, and then we have 208,999. It's off by $1. 521.30. That's one's right on. That one's right on. And so I will fix that, and we'll see if those come in. But this is, it's kind of cool. I know that when we originally did this for PPS, they just loved it because they had literally hundreds of grants, and it just gave the ability to keep track of them a little bit better and budget for them. And we are in the future possibly going to do, more extend the capabilities of the grant worksheet or the grant grid to include the full years. Actually, each grant would have the fiscal years underneath it, so this hierarchy is going to get a little bit busier. And again, like everything else, you can have it saved to spreadsheet. So,
Scott, can I ask a question?
yes.
So did you say this is Martha's data?
Martha, yes, at Jefferson County.
Oh, so Martha, I just wanted to ask you, so like on your Title I grant, for example, I see that you're in balance with that, but that's a drawdown grant. So you could have expenditures beyond what your revenue is you're bringing in. So how are you getting that to balance?
When you say the drawdown revenue, are you talking about like the carryover amounts?
No, not necessarily. I'm saying maybe you have, do you draw yours down like monthly?
Yeah, we have a monthly drawdown process for our grants. Yes. So what all this is doing is this is a budget. This shows what we budgeted for that grant for that year.
Oh, that's the piece I keep getting confused on.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
it's not the actuals. Yep, that's right.
No. But
Yeah,
you can see the actuals you can see the actuals.
if my fingers worked today, we can see the actuals. Why aren't they showing up?
If I'm thinking about this correctly, I might be able to answer that.
Try that other add comment, Scott.
At the end of each month, when we do our draw,
another
we
one, up higher,
reconcile the fund
up higher.
balances.
Oh, whoops, I can't hear you.
Oh, look at that. Well, that's baseline though.
I'm sorry, Timothy, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. So I'm hoping I'm thinking on the right path. So at the end of each month, so like when we pull our stuff for the end of the month, we reconcile our draw to like all the expenditures. And so when we're looking at it, like if you go into the next month, it won't tie anymore because we have expenses we haven't drawn for. But as of the last reconciled month, everything does tie because we actually zero out like the fund balance basically by doing that revenue draw for the expenses that happened in the prior month.
Yeah, so you'd have to make sure you were pulling your data just to the end of that month, because if you did go into the next month, you could have expenditures that have no draw against them.
Yes.
Okay.
So Martha, the actuals are not available on the grant grid. They're available on the financials, of course, but I thought
Is that just the budget then?
Yes, but I don't know any reason why I wouldn't actually have them here. So I'll look at that also.
Okay, because I mean, I just usually look at the financial tab. I guess I'm not really in the grant. I really only use the grant tab when I'm budgeting. I really don't use it throughout the year.
So if we look at it here, you can see your actuals for this particular grant. What grant was that you were talking about? This one, Title I-A, Rhonda?
Yeah, that was the example I was asking about. So Martha, while he's finding that, you just use the grant module piece for budgeting.
That is correct. I don't really use it throughout the year for actuals. It's just for budgeting purposes.
Okay.
And that's because it really is only a single year. We're not able to do that full, what's the full grant allocation, how much is being used year one, year two, what's the, but when we get to that, I'll be looking for a lot of input on what works and how it works. But right now it is fairly simplistic.
Rhonda,
I like it though. I think it's good. I think I'm going to start using it.
Okay.
Rhonda, we actually use the grant project module in Infinite Visions.
In IV, yeah.
Yep, to manage our grants. And that's the process we use, and we're able to track which grant we're working from, if it's a year one or if it's a carryover.
Timothy, do you know how to use that, how it's set up, or is that just Martha?
Use what?
The grants in Infinite Visions.
No, he knows. Yeah, he knows how to use it.
And the reason I'm asking, because if it's data that's in Infinite Visions, I could pull it. I could actually pull some data out, and so I might, when I have time, right, be looking maybe for some screenshots or some information on how that works, and what if any value you would see us pulling from there into the budgeting side. So anyway.
Yeah, if you need that, feel free to get hold of me and I can help you up with that.
Okay, good. So that's kind of the grant modules. It's been a very, very little used module, and that's why it's still kind of edgy. But I'm trying to make it more and more reliable and robust, and actually not have pop-up errors. But we did have to do some customizations to get all of this working with two elements and actually build this hierarchy. It used to be just a single row. You didn't have a roll up to a parent grant like 205 and then have all the sub grants underneath it. So we did have to do some work to make it work, but it is okay. It's not perfect yet.
One more question, Scott. Does it feed? So does the employee tab feed into the grant tab, and then the grants tab feeds into financials?
Well, we do this FTE and salary cost. It is coming from the roll-up values. You have this employee salary column. So when it does its summaries, it's using just let's see if that number matches, 577.6. Oops, I pressed the wrong tab, darn it. It's summing from the financials, but it goes from the employees to the financials and then to the grants.
Gotcha, okay.
577,977, yeah, it's right there. And the total expense is 749. Amount.
It's pretty slick. I like it.
What did I get in there? It said 974. $719 plus the salary. Oh, the indirect is not in there, but it should be. It's not updated on the main grid, which is that error that came up with that new function. So the other cool thing that Martha is doing, and Corvallis is using the responsibility center piece also. Now, Martha, you're not actually letting your managers manipulate the data yet, correct?
Correct, not yet.
Right. Okay, but she set up her responsibility centers with her the primary approver, and she's got the model of a lot of the data, and it's the same type of deal. It is actually summarizing from the financial grid, but you build up your responsibility centers in the user administration form, and you can do that by setting up account masks. And this is where you assign who your primary approvers are. And you can be pretty detailed if we looked at this curriculum department, you know, you can see it's got those are areas. No, those are functions. You can see the pretty complex list of functions, and these are editable. I did clean this form up. You can now edit with the pencil. You can add, but you get a regular scope form to build those access strings, and then you can have multiples, and then you can have things be additive. So this is her basic. First, we give her access to everything. Then we say only funds 100 through 999 and sub. What is that last element called? Is that your sub area, Martha? Sub area is 000.
We
And
call it
then
suffix, or I think sometimes other
Suffix.
school districts call it grant or project or something like that.
And so then we set up for this curriculum department. This is kind of their primary area of coverage. And then we also added in Fund 100 area function 2240 center 710. And then they use the sub function or the suffix to kind of build up their responsibility centers also. But using these flags gives you the ability to be very granular in how you set up your responsibility centers. And once you get a hang of how it works, it tends to be pretty easy. But there is a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how to set this hierarchy up. But we've got some tools to let you quickly add a bunch of responsibility centers if they can be based on an element, like your center or a suffix. We can populate them fairly quickly. And then you can see she set up her grants, a separate area for her grants program. As we move on, this same, if these people were to actually sign in, their scope form would be limited to only what they can see. So at this case, if as an administrator, if I'm testing and setting up this scope for the curriculum department, I can test on a scope form, and I can see that this person only has access to 0 suffixes. And so that's the only thing that pops up in the list. They only have access to Fund 100. So that's the only thing that shows up in their list. And if I look at functions, you can see she's got 1210. She's got a limited set of functions that she can access. So as she's manipulating her budget, she can only see the objects that she's been given access to. And you can even limit by object. Her centers, are they limited? Yeah, they're limited. You get 108 through 608, yeah. So you've got, and then you can see she's got center 108 through 608 in the first line, but then she added with additive, she added center 710. So you can see that the scope form is limiting their access to what they can see in the grid.
You can also limit, there's a lot of other functions you can limit. You could limit them just to the financials tab or not allow recalc.
Yeah, if you go over here, you can say, I want them just to see the financials. A lot of districts for responsibility centers, they don't want the employees. They let the staffing of the employees be only in the budget office. But they can see their responsibility center. And if they sign in, they will only have one record in their responsibility center, and that would be for the curriculum department. And a lot of times, if you don't give them access to employees, you don't have to give them access to employee details. Now, that being said, with what we saw yesterday with the new quick functions, where you can add vacancies and budgeted positions and split without using the employee details, for responsibility center managers, you could turn off the big heavy duty employee details and only give them access to the quick and lightweight ones. And then they have to do everything else in the grid. because some administrators, particularly a principal or vice principal, if they were to look at that employee details, it's a pretty daunting form. There's a lot of fields on it, but they're better apt to be able to use the grid. Now, another thing that I don't see, and this probably is more related, that Martha actually does her budgeting with in an interview style with her managers. Hopefully we're going to change that, but you can set up grid views and actually set up all the responsibility centers like RC Manager. So there's a saved grid view called RC Manager, and you can control how their grid looks when they open it up. I don't know if we didn't save one for employees, but then you can also say, I want them to use this view, but I want it to lock. I don't even want them to be able to change and add other columns to it. So we're able to lock things down quite a bit, and we can lock down what they have access to. They can recalculate their scope, and that's it. They can't do any versioning. They can't do any, this form is not building right on my system. The checkboxes aren't aligning well, but you can control pretty good granularity what they have access to.
Is this available to anybody, or is it extra, or how does that work?
No, this is all part of ESP. You just have to decide you want to take the time to get it all set up. But once it's set up, it's global. It's not like you have to set it up for every scenario.
Okay, gotcha.
And I don't know if you noticed there's a saved grid view called RC Workbook. At this point, because of this challenge I'm facing with the security issues at one of the ESDs to get the Infinite Visions people back online, I may not be able to show you what we're doing with the RC Excel add-in on Friday. I'll be able to show you the website, the ESP web app, but my attention's been drawn away from getting that add-in. But very, very quickly, by the end of the month, I'm going to have an Excel add-in to where you can control the view or the columns that they actually see in their Excel add-in, and RC managers can look at their budget and submit their budget proposals through Excel. So anyway, there's lots going on in the area of responsibility center managers. There is this one function here, I'll note, shared funding access. If you've got somebody like in special ed where they've got partial funding in many locations, they might have, one employee that there is actually in their responsibility center for half the day, and then they belong to somebody else's responsibility center for the other half day. If you turn on the shared funding access, it's going to let that person edit or manipulate both fundings for that shared employee, and we leave it up to them to coordinate with the other responsibility center manager that they're making changes. Because when you do changes, if you're going to say I'm only going to use that person a third of the day or a third of the time now, you want to coordinate with the person who owns the other portion of it. What are we going to do with the rest of that time? We can't just willy-nilly take a third away or a portion of somebody's day away without figuring out what to do with the rest of it. So this gives you the ability to manipulate the full employee if you have a shared funding. So the other thing that I'll show you is when we first did this, the intention was that it would be for the responsibility center managers, and you'd be able to trim their scope down. In a lot of districts, they only let the managers manipulate objects 300 through 699 in Washington, and it'd be all the MSOCs, Beth, in Washington. But as I started to do this, I saw that, gosh, we're going to build this great hierarchy, and then we're going to trim it down and pull all the employees out just to facilitate the responsibility center managers. And I thought, what a waste, because that way this form wouldn't show the total budget. So what we did is we create this managed scope. And if I wanted to say, I only want my managers to access, and I'm not going to say this, Martha, if I only wanted them to manage the purchase services and materials and supplies, I could actually set an it's actually not called allocated, that's a system label, but that's probably how it's going to stay. I could set this, it didn't save, 0300-0699. It's not saving. And I'll figure that out too. It would limit the actual responsibility center managers to only 300 through 699, and they wouldn't even see the employees and the employee fixed costs. But that would also give us the ability to map both the whole budget, and you can see we've got allocated amount encumbrance. There's allocated amounts that are just controlled by this mask, and then there's total amounts. In the case of Martha, the allocated amount is it's wide open, so there's no difference between her total amounts and her allocated amounts. But if we got 300 through 699 in there, did the responsibility center recalc, the allocated amounts would only be 300 through 699, because that's all you're going to give access to your responsibility center managers. But there's other columns, allocated amount, and then the amount column is would be the total budget. And another recent change that we made is the balance of the budget. Anything that's not covered in a responsibility center, we automatically create a budget office, and the balance of the budget gets thrown into the budget office. So your total amounts should be equal to your net budget. So anyway, it does work pretty well. It's still got some growing pains, but we're putting a lot of effort and focus in. We've actually have enlisted some additional talent offshore to help us get this thing working, and get the responsibility center and the web app and the Excel add-in functional. So, any questions? Oh, and I'm 10 minutes over. I'm sorry. Nope, no questions. Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk to you all tomorrow.
We'll pick up on that document that I sent everybody tomorrow, explaining the columns and how the totals are built up. And be sure and come prepared with some questions. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Scott, leave that up for a second.
Okay.
Did you see that well, first of all, the right click, all the check boxes are gone in the context menu.
Right click on the columns?
Yeah. Like go to anything. The check boxes that show which ones are.
Which ones are actually showing?
Right. They're gone on all the tabs. Yeah. And then do that again. What's this? The fourth one down from the top?
It shows the tooltip. It's instead, you can hover and it'll pop up.
Yeah.
But you can also force it to come up. It's like, what's this?
Oh, but you can only do that on the column heading, right? Not like in a field.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can't get that pop up to come up, you can say, what's this?
Oh, okay. All right. And yeah, something's going on with the checkbox alignment on the user admin form.
Yeah, I saw that. That should be a simple fix. I'm going to find out that function. What was it called that was missing? BES element by name.
All right, I'm going to go. I'm going to hit the head.
Okay, I'll talk to you in a bit. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.